What if I told you that it's everything you can't see on your roof that can make the difference? I'm talking about what is underneath your shingle, your tile, your metal. It's called underlayment, and it's what's underneath your roof that counts. Today, we're going to be talking to our roofing expert, Mr. Mike Feasel, here on Roofing Explained, about the importance of underlayment and how it can make your roof or it can break it. Mike, thanks so much for joining us, man, as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Man, I'll tell you what, this the underlayment thing, I didn't understand until I got involved with roofing just how important underlayment is. Before we ever jump into anything, what the heck does underlayment mean? Because somebody just thinks, I'm getting shingle on top of my roof, right?
Yeah. Underlayment means many things. So for asphalt shingles, traditionally it was felt paper, 15-pound felt paper, which is just a saturated asphalt paper. And you would put that over the plywood or over the sheathing board, but let's just say over the wood. And then you install the shingles. So you apply that, and then you install the shingles on top. Mm-hmm. Then they came out with synthetic underlayments, which are stronger. And that is commonly used today nationwide. I would say still felt is more typically used just due to cost savings. But then you get into the ice and water barriers, which are a rubberized underlayment. They're thicker in millage. And also when you penetrate a nail through it, it seals around that nail. And it stops against wind-driven rain, ice, snow, ice dams. You've probably heard the term ice dams. That product can be used typically along the gutter edge or the eaves, up valleys where two slopes intersect, around flashings. And there are some parts of the country where they're installing that ice and water shield on the entire roof deck. And then they even have a thicker version of that they put underneath tile roofs.
Yes.
Or underneath metal roofs.
Let's talk about the one that's most popular. We talk about across the country, is the felt paper.
Yeah.
I say paper loosely here, but you gave a 15-pound. I believe there are higher poundage than that, maybe 30 or 45. 30. What exactly does that mean to a homeowner? Because when I think about that, I'm like, I don't know, 15-pound, 30-pound felt paper. What the heck are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Can you shed some light on that for us?
Yes. So the predominantly 30-pound felt was used with wood shake roofs and also under slate roofs. Today, you see some roofers putting 30-pound felt underneath the shingles, but for the cost, you'd be better off just to go to synthetic. 15-pound felt is most commonly used underneath asphalt shingles. Like in all things, there are various grades. Builder's grade works if you're selling the home, and if you're staying long-term, you're better off to go with the premium product. Your roof will last third to double as a builder's grade roof. Also, it's going to stand up to a tornado passing through the area here in Florida or hurricane. We're more likely to stand up and protect the structure.
I've heard you say a couple of times the breathability of a roof. We've talked about ventilation on previous episodes is important. When I think about a synthetic or rubberized kind of underlayment, I think about the disadvantages in breathability that might be there. So are there ever times where you'd recommend even a cheaper product on a roof?
No, because I'm going to address the ventilation issue.
Okay.
That is, to me, the ventilation is equally as important as the quality of the labor and the quality of the materials and the specification of that project. The ventilation is just it's a huge component that's very frequently overlooked.
Now, are there different, like when I think about shingles, are there different brands? Because we're talking about synthetics here. Ice and Water Shield, I almost think is a brand more as much as it is.
No, they're different manufacturers.
They're manufacturers.
Yeah, and all the different components in the roofing industry, they're different manufacturers. There's competition.
Interesting. So if I'm a homeowner, are there certain manufacturers, or is this completely dependent on the place you are in the country? Because in shingles, there seems to be maybe 5, 6 basic manufacturers that are out there, and each contractor uses their own one that maybe has advantages and disadvantages. Do you find that same thing with the underlayment? There's a couple manufacturers and people are using their one of choice?
So there are certain manufacturers that just make underlayments.
Okay.
But then most of the roofing manufacturers now have their own versions of different underlayments as well. 6, 7 national manufacturers, I'm not sure exactly, on the asphalt shingles. One that was regional going national, and then a handful of regional players. And there is a difference in quality of product and the warranties that stand behind them.
I want to talk a little bit about this because it's really kind of has to do with the underlayment. I've heard this word thrown around, starter shingle. What if somebody is saying, is there a difference in the types of shingles that are going to be applied? I know this might be a little bit different than underlayment, but I think about this almost as the beginning of the process for putting on your new roof.
Yep.
Can you explain exactly what is a starter shingle for those who have never heard it?
Yeah, it used to be you just used a regular shingle and made some cuts and flipped it upside down and did a few things, and that was your starter shingle.
But where does it go? Like, what exactly does it mean?
Along the gutter edge.
Okay, along the gutter edge. Okay.
Up the edge or the rakes of the roof.
Got it.
Right, so in those areas. But now the starter shingles, it's just a full shingle. It has the adhesive strip in the right place. It is the way to go. Using a starter shingle makes sense because it is the edge of the roof that's taking the wind.
Yep. So you're adhering that edge of that roof, and that's going to the underlayment that we're talking about right here.
It's going to be nailed. It's going to be nailed to the deck. And then there's a thing called a drip edge or edge flashing that's even underneath the starter shingle.
Got it. I guess sometimes I've heard that the underlayment can almost be the safeguard, if you want to look at it that way, because sometimes a shingle might be high nailed, so it blows a little bit. Maybe, it comes up a little. But really, I look at the underlayment as being that last layer of protection. I'd like you to just talk about the roofing system itself, because it's almost a fall safe, if you want to look at it that way, this underlayment that's there.
Yes.
And is it possible then to have some deficiencies within your shingle and still be able to block out the water and block out water intrusion if you've got a strong and a solid underlayment underneath?
Yes, 100%. So ice and water shield would be the best. Again, let's use Florida in an extreme situation. Hurricane comes in, takes off 400 or 500 square feet of shingles, large area.
Happens.
And during that storm, it's going to rain for 8 or 10 hours, lots and lots of rain. With ice and water shield, pretty much you wouldn't have a leak if that whole entire roof were covered with ice and water shield. If it were just felt, the felt could rip, the 15-pound felt. So now you actually have exposed wood. In Florida, I believe they require a 30-pound felt underlayment as the base here in Florida. I think that's the Dade County Building Code, if I recall. We had offices down here back in 04, 05, and 06, so I think they're still doing it that way. Synthetic underlayment doesn't tear very easy. I mean, you almost can't tear it. Even a big guy like you almost can't tear it with your hands. So that's going to withstand those high winds should the shingles fail and blow off. And that's going to keep most of the water out of the structure. You're not going to have water just pouring into the structure like you would if the felt were to be removed. So the synthetic would be your best backstop.
There's some great things to consider here. What I'm going to take away from this, everybody, is your individual home will determine what kind of underlayment you need depending on what area of the country you're in. And then I think as well, the underlayment, as you said, Mike, is where is it going to be put? Just because, if you have a valley, that's going to be a place where you are going to need some stronger underlayment, in my opinion. I think we talked about that, something that's synthetic or one of these rubberized, an ice and water shield.
Yep.
But does that mean that you need it everywhere along your roof? That's a personal decision. It's going to cost you more money. And so you may want that. That's for you to decide within your own family.
Yeah. What's your budget? What's your what are you planning to do with this home? Are you going to be here for another 5 years and you're going to downsize, or you're having another child, you need a bigger home? Yeah. So a lot of things to consider. Make
the right decision, though, for you and your family about what goes on underneath that shingle. If you have a big storm, you have a hurricane, you have a lot of wind-driven rain in your area, or a hailstorm, you're going to be very happy that you've got the right underlayment underneath those shingles, the tile, or the metal. Talk to me.
Yeah. In closing, the right contractor, again, you hear me say it all the time, the right contractor will help you make those decisions to understand it. That is their job.
Yes, and I believe that the right contractor will explain that on their estimate.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you do see differences in the estimate, don't be afraid to turn right to the underlayment. What are you getting? Yes. Where is it going to be? And be able to talk about that with a contractor, comparing apples to apples on what's going to go on underneath that shingle.
Yep, very much.
Tell you what, everyone, we've got our roofing expert here, Mr. Mike Feasel with Roof Maxx, and we'll see you next time here on Roofing Explained.